I'm ready.
Right. It says it's setting it up. It
Well, I
says
know
it's
Tracey said
reading.
she can't be here till dead on 3, didn't she? So she'll be able to hop in if I start anyway.
Well, I'm going to start with Sheila.
All right, brilliant. Probably the best way. Will I
Right.
be able to see her, Julia?
Can you not see me?
Okay, then. Yes.
Oh,
So we are definitely all live now. Good afternoon, everyone, anyone. I'll just wait a few moments before we actually kick off our live Q&A. So pull up your cup of coffee, your pot of tea, your cake. Got
That would have
Sheila.
been a good idea.
It would have been, wouldn't it? Got
Yeah.
Sheila and Cherry here. Um, Ladies and gentlemen, while we're waiting, I've got some lovely questions lined up for Sheila and Cherry. But because Tracey was so efficient on the day and answered everything, she claims not to have any questions. So if you've got a question about the hog or about pelvic stability in the clam resulting from what you saw at the celebration, put it in the comments, and when she arrives, I'll pick one or two of them. Go on, what were you going to say, Cherry?
Tracey's also said that there's been a comment in Lunch Club about cueing high tone pelvic floor.
Okay.
So I saw that Tracey had put a little bit of a comment in our group to say she will cover that rather than answering it on the Lunch Club group. She said she will answer that today.
Right, let me write that down.
here she comes. Here's Tracey.
So just saying hello to some people who are saying hello to us, just so you know who's here. Alison's saying hello, Jane Wetton, Liz Mason, Michelle Glenn, Kelly Wilkinson, shout out Leslie Moran, Vicky Radford, local.
Yay!
Kate Proctor, Kim Venters, Jam Davis, Debbie Tyson, Catherine Ford, you're all here. So we're going to get going in a moment. We're not going to delay too long. But if you have a particular question about the hog, then please do ask it in the comments and I'll pick one or two of those. But I'm going to kick off with Sheila's questions in a moment. Alida's here.
Hello, beautiful.
I think Alida won a prize at the celebration, if I remember correctly. I might be right or not. Do you know what? We're, by the way, everyone, we're on Zoom. I think you can see that. I think Facebook tells you that we're on Zoom, doesn't it? And I do like what Zoom does to my complexion. Oh, Tracey, I can't hear you. Have you got your mic on? No, can't hear you now. Try again.
Doesn't say I'm on mute.
Oh, you're on now. Can hear
Am
you
I
now.
on now?
You're on now. Excellent. So we've got a mic check. Oh, look at Cherry arranging a set. Hang on a minute. If we're arranging sets, just in case anyone didn't see my little moment this morning. Actually, before we begin, this morning I gave you half a story. I was banging on about Business Prime, wasn't I? And I forgot to mention you can claim for Business Prime as an expense. Amazon Business Prime. Anyway, if you didn't see me broadcast this morning, you'll have to go back and watch that. But you can claim for it. Yes.
Isn't it?
What's that?
About 70 quid a year, Amazon Prime.
Yeah, but I was paying for Amazon Prime. But if you have Business Prime, Tracey, you can download all your transactions onto one piece of paper. That's why I've done it. Because I started trying to collate everything and I was like, having a meltdown. So that's why I've done it. But it's actually cheaper than normal Prime. Anyway, let's kick off. I'm going to start asking Sheila some questions now. Sheila, slow motion initiation moves. Do we cue from the top of the body or the bottom of the body? And also, when stepping off the step, should we teach plantar flexion or dorsiflexion?
Okay, so first question is about where should we teach from? And it's always got to be from the foot position, get that strong, stable base. So for instance, if you're stepping down or stepping up, the foot position will be dictated by the range of movement at the ankle. So we're always looking at people's alignment. When you're just walking on flat ground, I am specific at where I want them to place the weight. So if they were, for example, toe walking, I want the weight through the big and second toe. And it is placing the foot down, and then you shift the body mass over. And at that point, you're going to be looking at the alignment from feet upwards. So loading, safety loading, and then transferring that weight. With regards to, what was the second question, Julia?
Plantar flexion or dorsiflexion when stepping off the step.
Okay, when you're going up steps, it should be heel to toe action for the stepping leg. Remember, we've got two legs, and as you load and transfer that weight, you need to clear that back foot. So on that back foot, we need hip and knee flexion, but you also need to make sure that the toes out of the way, because if the toes trailing, you're likely that you could trip over. So it's a heel to toe dorsiflexion of the foot. Coming down the stairs, when you're coming down, depending on the depth of the stair, that will dictate how your foot moves. So obviously it's toe to heel, so you're stepping down. But there is a transference of weight more forward, so your knees translating further forward over towards the toes than you would normally when you're walking around. So it's toe to heel. However, I do, if I want to do a training aspect, I will train on a smaller, lower step, a heel strike, because I'm working on the standing leg. We're working on the stabilizers around the knee and the alignment from the ankle, knee and hip on that leg. Does that answer that question?
It does. When you answer this next question, could you speak a bit louder?
Oh, I will.
Or maybe hutch up a bit closer.
So you can see all my lines then.
We've noticed this before, actually. It may be that the mic on your gadget isn't very sensitive. But anyway, the next question is, with the knee hover, should the feet stay flat or can people tuck their toes under? So I think this is dorsiflexion, plantar flexion again, isn't it? When you're doing knee hover, which is best? Or can you do either?
I will always teach both, because within a class environment, you will get some people that have the toes don't like the tucking under, so they prefer their foot flat, and those that prefer the toes tucked under. So you've got an option either or, and I will always teach both, giving people the option of which one they want. Was that a louder answer?
Yes, it was. Yes. Can the fist position be used for the hover and sitting and loading, especially regarding carpal tunnel or wrist impingement through injury? So is the fist position okay?
Absolutely. What you're looking at is it's not focusing on what the client can't do, it's focusing on how we can get them to perform it the best way they can. So if it's affecting the wrists, then by all means using the fist action. But you can also use weight, so they're still holding that position and the wrist is in that neutral position. It's not impacting on that wrist, the carpal tunnel. You also can use on the forearms. Always remember that we're trying to aim to give a whole body. So if they're always on the forearms, then they're not necessarily going to be loading the wrists. So you've got to be thinking, if I want to load the wrists, how can I do it? So there are alternatives. So in a kneeling position, you could be getting a fitness circle and loading here. So it's still loading through upper body, but you're getting some activity within the wrists to make them stronger.
Super, excellent. Okay, do you remember the Posh lady sitting push-ups? Are these Posh lady sitting push-ups okay for those with osteoporosis? In particular, I'm thinking from the angle of fixed pelvis but needing to rotate the upper body to get into the push-up position. Is that okay? Is it fine with osteoporosis?
Fixed pelvis. You are moving the pelvis with the body, so it would be a rotation. You're not, there's some exercises where we would say stay firm through the pelvis on your sit bones and rotate. That's fixed. But with this, we're actually moving and rotating, lifting the buttock up. And so therefore it's not loaded. Obviously, we're still looking at the alignment of the spine and neck throughout.
Cool, no worries. Right, so this next one was, I wasn't sure if it was a statement or a question, but I think you know the answer. Totally can't say the words you used for the 3 systems apart from the visual. Can you expand on that? I know I was in the room, but I've got no memory.
Well, we do have lots of systems, but the main sensory systems are the vestibular system. So that's the inner ear, okay? And then the visual system, which they know. So your eyes gives information back to the brain, and the brain responds accordingly. But in the inner ear, we have the semicircular canals, we have fluid, and we have hairs. This is just one little aspect of it. And every time we move, it's feeding information back to the brain in order for us to stay in a balanced position, so homeostasis. Then the last one is what's called somatosensory, and I would say on that one, when I first was looking at somatosensory, I had to say tomatosensory because I couldn't say somatosensory. So eventually I rolled it up. I'll just use proprioception. So it's all the little signals all in all the joints feeding back of where you are in space.
Excellent, thank you. This session, which for those who weren't on the celebration, was a balance in the bones. Is it for young and old, or is it just for old? She really enjoyed it. And how long do you spend warming up an older adult? How long do you spend warming up an older adult? And is that workout suitable for younger people?
I would certainly say for younger people, remember that bone is a living organism. Many years I called it a living orgasm, but that one's stored away. But it's the fact that it's replacing and renewing constantly. So the amount of load we put through it will help to develop that peak maximum bone growth, so our bone density. As you're getting older, you need to keep on going. So it doesn't matter whether you're young or old, you need to work on your bone mineral density. The other question was...
Oh, sorry. How long do you spend warming up for an older adult?
Okay, so warming up is really how long I can see that their range of movement has increased. If I'm doing a Pilates class, I want to have worked through all the body from top to toe and practice moves, making sure their alignment. So it's very relative to the individual. It can be 15 minutes, but within that time, I'm just gradually progressing. So it depends on what activity I'm providing. And I'm looking at the individual, because that is the marker is, does that client look as if they're ready for the next element of this class? And if they're not, we need to be looking at increasing that length of time.
Excellent, thank you so much.
Julianne, would it be a pain if I just jumped in there?
Go on, yeah, go for it.
It's something that, funnily enough, Sheila and I were just talking about the other day, that with older adults, as you were saying, it's never too early to start doing exercises, particularly look at increasing bone density. And I've got a beautiful lady who's just found out that she's got osteoporosis, and she's devastated. And I keep saying to her, it's quite normal, and they've caught it early, you can sort it out. And she was saying, yeah, but I've gone to Pilates twice a week, I've gone to Young at Heart every week, I walk all the time. But she's a very, very slim lady. Always has been. Serves her right for being slim. If she was a poor client, she'd be all right. But she was sort of saying, I've done lots, and why have I still got it? But what I did say to her is, if she hadn't have done all that exercise, the bone density might have been a lot less. So it's never too early to start. And then Sheila and I were also talking that when we are working with older adults, we do warm them up, but we also might put a little bit more things like a march into it, or something that is a little bit more dynamic. We were talking about that, weren't we, just the other day, because they do need to get the circulation. So there might be, if you are working with older adults, and if you do Sheila's older adult course, you'll see that there are implications of making sure that an older adult is warmed up. But what I did want to say is to each and every one of us, is when we're teaching a class, I think Pilates is very different to a fitness class. That, say for instance, every single exercise I do, even if it's in the middle of the class, and I don't know if Tracey and Sheila would agree with me, but every one of my new exercises has a mini warm-up in it. You know, so if I've just done something through the shoulders, I might not go straight into a knee lift. I might do a little bit of heel lifting. And in that way, it always gives somebody an exercise to go back to. So I think warming up is not just what you do at the beginning. It's also what we do in preparation with each new position or each new movement.
Excellent. Yes, thinking about incorporating the warm-up as you work through your session, not just at the beginning. I shall remember that one. This is the last one for a little while, Sheila, and then you get a rest, and then I'm going to ask you a couple more. I have a lady with severe arthritis in both her wrists, cannot put any pressure through them, wondering how I can adapt for her.
Again, arthritis has two elements. You've got rheumatoid arthritis and osteoarthritis, but the thing is that it can get irritated if you load it too much. However, it needs a lot of movement to keep the synovial fluid and keep the joints as healthy as possible. So it is a little bit of a two-way thing that I work with anybody with any joint arthritis, that I want them to be able to load a little bit, increase their strength, because upper body strength is needed, but we don't want, if we've overworked them, then that would entail them having more pain. So my rule of thumb is that I will give them a little bit of load. For example, I gave this before, where they can work on strength of upper body. They're not gripping, because it depends on where the arthritis is. They can be doing upper body where they're just doing the hands on the thighs and an isometric press down. They can do other things like towels, where they're squeezing and twisting and using a band as well to try and increase. But you're trying to make the repetitions small, and then testing, right, next week, let's see how you were, how you reacted to that little bit. So even if it's 2 or 3 repetitions, that might seem like not a lot. But for somebody who's frightened of loading, because they're frightened of the discomfort, then that is a lot. So then we test and we'll see how they go, and then we can increase the repetitions gradually. What we don't want to do is to leave them in pain, and it is post 2 hours of that they start to get more irritation, the inflammation's flaring up.
Excellent. Well, you get a little brief rest. We had a lot of questions along the lines of, where can I find out about your course? Interested in more info on level 3 older adults. I'd really like to do your older adults course. Will this be online and will it be face to face? I thought I'll answer that because I've got nothing else to say. You can do right now Sheila's level 3 older adult course through Trained Academy. To sign up for it, to get the info, you just go to trainedacademy.co.uk. We've just changed things recently, so if you did look previously and looked at the start dates and thought that you couldn't do them, we've changed it so it's like a rolling enrolment now, so you can enrol at any time. Within about 5 days, we'll have you all hooked up on the learning platform. You'll get your manual and then you can kick off. There's online material to study, potentially Zoom calls with Sheila as well, so it's a really, really great course. I won't bang on about it too much because I've got so much to say. But yeah, it's ready and available now, and it's on trainedacademy.co.uk. So, last 2 questions, which kind of like are also about qualifications as well. Does having chair-based for frail older adults and the Otago qualification qualify you for working with older adults, or do you need the level 3?
Okay, both chair-based and the Otago are evidence-based, specific, prescriptive exercise programs. So the chair-based is as it is, you just sat down. doing exercise. The Otago is set exercises that go from increasing strength and increasing balance. That's all. They're two completely separate programs that are usually run under an umbrella of the Otago, certainly of physiotherapists. Although we did do cascade training for people to work in the community, but it is very specific. You can't go, oh, I want to put an arm float in, or I want to do a posh lady sitting, because that isn't in the program. So it's a prescriptive program. And so the older adult is specifically working, whether you're on the floor, standing, with older not frailer adults. So they are active and independent. So that's the difference. You can have all the qualifications, and therefore you can incorporate all in the class, chair-based, standing, or older adult, but they are separate only if you've got the qualification. I think Cherry may elaborate a little bit more on that. Am I correct?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Well, in that case, I'm going to leave the next question because it is about chair-based. So we'll set that to one side and Cherry can tell us about that. I'm going to move on to Tracey because she's been sat there patiently, and I know she hasn't got too much time. She's physioing left, right and centre. In the group...
She's doing it with her feet now whilst we're talking. She's
She's physioing right away. So in our group this week, there was a question about high tone pelvic floor, and you thought it'd be a good time to respond to that now. So go for it.
Okay, so hi, the question on lunch, if you didn't see it, was regarding a client, a regular class member who's been diagnosed with having a high tone pelvic floor, which there weren't really any details, but presumably she'd been diagnosed by physio or a urogynae person. And really the question was about, I always cue, or I regularly cue pelvic floor, I don't know what to do with this lady. And so this question kind of spills over to what Cherry and I were talking about regarding pre-cueing, and whether it's appropriate to cue or not to cue. So way back in the day when we all trained, we were kind of told that every single exercise, every single setup, we should be cueing pelvic floor and TA activation. And really what the discussion was about at the end of the celebration was that, I don't really do that anymore. There are better ways of encouraging pelvic floor and abdominal muscles to work spontaneously, which is what we want really. We want them to move spontaneously without encouraging rigidity. So we want the body to be responsive and able to move and respond to load. But particularly regarding pelvic floor, if you're cueing pelvic floor for every single exercise and never cueing pelvic floor relaxation or release, then you are in danger of encouraging people to become overactive in their pelvic floor muscles. And that can be problematic in its own right. It can cause stress incontinence just as much as a lax pelvic floor can, and it can cause problems with pelvic pain. So in the same way that we wouldn't want anybody to keep their bicep contracted for a whole hour, so for every single exercise you teach, you wouldn't, for example, tell them to keep their bicep contracted. It's exactly the same thing. So that would cause shortening and muscle spasm. Well, the same thing can happen in pelvic floor. Now, if you haven't already done your diamond Pilates, of course, we go into this in much more depth, and we look at how you can encourage people to relax their pelvic floor with breathing and certain movements such as internal rotation of the hip, and that it's not entirely appropriate to just continually cue contraction of pelvic floor. So the answer to the question on lunch, and Gary, I'm sure you'll have something to say as well, was that really what we'd want is for you to specifically cue or work on pelvic floor with purpose on maybe 2 or 3 exercises in your class, and as either as a standalone, now we're going to do a bit of pelvic floor, or even better, incorporate it into an appropriate exercise, but also teach pelvic floor relaxation as part of that as well, also, and too. Anything to say, Ches?
Yeah, because I think that was something that we both came away, didn't we, from Celebration, thinking we didn't want people to think that we don't cue pelvic floor at all. Of course we do, but we might do it a little bit more with, as Tracey said then, with purpose, with intent of doing it, rather than for every single exercise, you know. And we were all trained that way. Take a breath in, breathe out, contract the pelvic floor, draw the tummy muscles in 20%. And some people will still do that. And that's fine, because it might suit them. But we were, Tracey, weren't we, a little bit worried that maybe we'd made people think we're saying don't do it at all. And we're not saying that at all. And again, when you look at some other things where people are saying lift the pelvic floor, draw the tummy in, and then they're doing an exercise that might take 3 minutes, it's not possible to try and keep it up there for that 3 minutes. However, we're not saying that's not useful, and particularly if you've got somebody who's struggling to get some sort of an effective abdominal connection, it might be effective to do that, but we're saying it's maybe not necessary to do it every single time on every single exercise for every single person. I like that, what you said though, Tracey, that with purpose, talking about the pelvic floor with purpose rather than just throwing it in with everything that you do. Because let's face it, does everybody understand lift your pelvic floor unless you explain what it is?
In the same way that, you know, you wouldn't only teach a squat. You know, you teach a squat to make people more functional and to strengthen the glutes and quads. You wouldn't stick a squat in to every single exercise that you were working with. So you would have purpose in teaching squat, you'd have purpose in teaching lunge, you'd have purpose in teaching dumb waiter. So really it shouldn't be any different to that. It should just be a component of your Pilates class. And I think in the last maybe 15 years, what we've seen in the physio world is that people that do a lot of Pilates have come away with the message that their abdominal muscles and their pelvic floor should be contracted all the time. And it shouldn't, in the same way as our biceps shouldn't.
Cool, excellent.
Can I just pick up on that? That's something that Tracey looks at in a lot more depth when we do Diamond Pilates, because we will get Diamond Pilates online, but Tracey's been doing a lot more training. Both Tracey and I are doing some training tomorrow, and we are in the middle of sort of redeveloping and rehashing our Diamond Pilates. I forgot what I was going to say about that.
Oh well, think about it for a minute.
There's only so much that HRT can do.
Well, it's useful that Tracey just mentioned squats, because in the comments, Kate says, Tracey mentioned how brilliant wall squats are in that session. I was wondering whether she could expand on that. Now, I don't know whether Kate doesn't know what a wall squat is and needs a demo, or whether there's something more to say about why they're so brilliant.
Freya demonstrated a wall squat. So the reason that I incorporated it, because it was the hips, shoulders, knees and toes session, wasn't it? And we'd incorporated it. We did hips, shoulders, knees and toes because really it's a lot of the content that we are. Was that me thinking? It's a lot of the content that we're looking at in osteoarthritis and Pilates, which isn't available yet, but will be shortly, I think.
I'm keeping account of how many courses you guys say we've got coming. I'm writing them down.
It's around osteoarthritis. So osteoarthritis in any joint can easily be irritated, and particularly with squats and lunges, if you are doing a lot of numbers, and if the joint might be in flare up anyway. So static isometric held exercises are a really good way of improving muscle strength, and research has shown that using isometric holds has then had a carryover effect to improve overall function. So if your knees are a little bit knackered and doing a lot of squat work really flares them up, or if you're just on a bad flare day, then doing wall squats where it's a static loading exercise for your quadriceps.
Okay, so just Colette's saying she can't hear you very well, but just to paraphrase that, Tracey's saying the reason why she's suggesting wall squats are brilliant is that you can effectively get the work of several squat repetitions by doing a wall squat that doesn't irritate an arthritic joint. Have I got that right?
So a static held rather than lots and lots of movement.
Yes, yeah. Cool. Excellent.
If I can just ask Tracey and Sheila, because they're both more experts on that, that being I've got really bad arthritis in my knees. I've been told it's grade 4. I can squat for England, but if I do a wall squat or do a squat where I hold, even if I'm just doing like a hip flexor stretch, if I stay in the position, my knees literally make a massive noise. They just go boom, boom, and I just can't stay in that position. So whilst I can squat dead easy, if you ask me to stay in that position, I can't, but I can if I'm on the wall. You know, if I'm on the wall, your centre of gravity has changed on the wall, hasn't it? Your hips are way back, so you haven't got the same anterior load on the knee. So in a squat, ideally we're sitting the hips back, but there will be some transfer. Can you see me? There will be a transfer load forward into the anterior part of the knee. And against the wall, you can be upright. With the load of the hips behind the knee. So you're getting the load into the quads but not into the joint. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense to me.
You would still be looking at doing something else then to develop the strength in the glutes, Tracey, because obviously what I don't want people to think is, oh, just go away. Yeah.
There might be some sit to stand work.
Yeah.
And I think
lunges are often kinder, aren't they, on the
I would add to the fact that if it was a lunge like going upstairs and things like that, our policy is to tend to always do load of one leg and load on the other, whereas I will alternate it so as there's a rest period between. Rather than do 10 lunges on my left, 10 lunges on my right, I'll alternate and let them rest. So 5 and a 5, let them rest. And so they're getting functional rather than load and irritating it further.
Excellent. Right. Have we got any hog questions? Any hog teachers in the comments? Any hog questions? Write them in and we can come back to Tracey, but she can't stay for too long, so be quick. In the meantime, I've got some questions for Cherry. Cherry, what news on long loop bands?
A few people made a comment. Thank you very much. It's something that Tracey, myself and Sheila don't experience, not even if we stood on each other's shoulders being tall. But somebody had said that, so somebody had said to me that their band was just a little bit too short. So it's like on a full stretch. And I know in some of the gentlemen that I've had in class, if they use this band, there's a point that, you know, you'd be afraid of it snapping. We are in discussion with Noel, but unfortunately, because of everything that's going on and getting stuff over from China, all the stuff that he's bringing in that should have been here in sort of last year still hasn't come in. So he is looking in the future at making the same strength bands. So this is the yellow one, some of you had the red, but making some slightly longer. So he will be making a slightly longer length band, but we've got to get the people in China to be able to design it and to make it longer. But so watch this space, because we are aware that Sheila used to teach that class, the Monday night class. We've got about 3 gentlemen that are all over 6 foot, you know, and I was getting to the point I was thinking, we're getting a bit scared now. But yeah, if they use the red band, the band wouldn't stretch that much. Yep. So yeah, we are. So tall people, we do apologise.
And apparently there's going to be a full band CPD.
Yes.
Is that another thing? That's right. So I'm going to write that 3 things now that I'm writing down.
Even just today, I was teaching a class today. These bands are so good when we go back, team, because you can wipe them all down. Even today, I was doing a class today, and I did a new exercise with it quite by accident, because I'd got a lady that needed a chair-based alternative. So I was having to think of something I was doing on the floor. And, you know, this is such a versatile, cheap and easy piece of equipment to travel around, because the problem is, if you've got the normal bands and everybody's got their own band, they take it home with them, they shove it in their handbag, it can get very easily damaged, it can get wet on it, which makes it stick together, whereas these are a lot better. Yep. So yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. I'm just going to give a comment to Penelope. We have just discussed your question, so when the live is finished, if you rewind, you'll hear the conversation about level 3 chair base, and Cherry's still got some info on chair base to come up. But in the meantime, hip hinge squats, feeling like tummy is letting go. Is this lack of tone?
Well, I mean, Sheila and Tracey can both join in with me on this, and the lovely lady that sent it, hi Claire. If you're doing a hip hinge and a squat and you feel that your abdominals are letting go, either there is lack of tone and they're just not capable of contracting. But from what Claire described, and Sheila and Tracey may not have seen the question, I think possibly that it's going into extension. Oh, sure, my bosoms, excuse me. So if we were, say, doing a squat and you were feeling that the tummy's pushing forwards, I would either say, make sure that you are slightly engaging and getting a sensation of drawing the hip bones closer together. So that's when we might cue, if you saw somebody doing that. But I would think, Tracey and Sheila, I don't know about you, that if when somebody was hip hinging and the tummy was letting go, or they were squatting, that possibly they're going into extension. I don't know what you were thinking. I was thinking if she's doing a hip hinge and feeling that the tummy's letting go, because even in that position, we should still be here or here, just to watch that when she's going into a squat or a hinge, she's not increasing. I think if I remember, Claire mentioned she felt she was losing the hip to rib connection. So is it that she's maybe going into extension rather than doing the movement in neutral? So it could be lack of tone, it could be maybe my fault that I didn't cue abdominals sufficiently, or it could be, or I think that maybe just watch that she's not going into an increased lordosis as she does the movement. We should be maintaining the normal lumbar curve, and perhaps she's increasing it.
Cool.
Tracey and Sheila, I don't know what you think about that, guys.
It's body awareness, so she's not aware what's happening, where your hips and ribs are coming apart. So taking it right back, using the pole to try and get her to check her alignment. Yeah,
that'll be good.
I don't know whether, what do you think, Tracey?
I was just thinking, maybe think of what's happening with her breathing as well. I mean, if she's breath-holding, is she pushing her tummy out?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's difficult to guess, isn't it?
Sort of not really a question so much, but we had quite a few people when we did the celebration that couldn't really see what was going on the clam session with the feet and so on. It was the only thing that we didn't have the opportunity to practice in advance, but as most of you know, we did film that session independently of the Zoom call, so you will get a good view of the feet when you log into your account.
I've looked at that, and it's fabulous because the PowerPoints are not there. I would really encourage anybody, if you did the clam with Tracey, please do it again, because I know it's Enya that's done it, who's my baby, but you know, to me, I watched it again, and I did because I couldn't take everything on board on the day of celebration. I was a bit, and so I've watched it again. Fabulous. I bet Tracey's not watched herself, but you can see so much more because she had a camera close up on the feet.
Yeah, brilliant. Where is the best place to do CPD on osteoporosis?
Us. Lots of people have done the osteoporosis course. I know lots of people have done it. I've done, again, Sheila and I were all having this conversation the other day, that what we do in the osteoporosis course that's out there would enable you to be able to work with people with osteoporosis who are fit, active and well. And at some point, Sheila's going to be doing a second part, which will be a little bit more specialist and maybe people who are not as fit and as active and well. But I don't know what people think, you guys that have done the osteoporosis course, if it's given you sufficient information to be able to work with those people. There are lots of other stuff. If you don't want to do hours as well, there's lots of other stuff. And Nikki's probably going to shoot me for saying this, but I'm not too keen on going down the road of reps and since. Those of you who've known me for a long time know that I fell out of love with them a long time ago. Still am a little bit, but we want to make sure that we are covered and you're covered. So we are looking at getting our osteoporosis course, as well as many of our other courses, to get some SimSpar points so that people have got that insurance behind them as well, that it's a recognised qualification.
Okay, I'm just going to answer a couple of questions in the comments.
Julianne,
yeah.
Whilst you're answering that question, I can hear somebody knocking downstairs. I'll be 1 minute. Yeah, Carol.
Okay, so Colette's saying the osteoporosis is a brilliant course, do it, highly recommended. Cara's asking, do you get to keep the access for osteoporosis forever? Yes, forever being the length of the life of Cherry Baker Education. So as long as we've got a website and it's up there, then yes, you've got access to it. We set a 90-day access on your celebration, but everything else is pretty much lifetime access, but lifetime of our business rather than your lifetime, if that makes sense. Margaret's also saying excellent osteoporosis course using the info in my sessions. Kate's saying brilliant. Catherine's saying yes please to SimSpar points. If anyone's wondering where you get this amazing osteoporosis course from, cherrybaker.com is where you will find it. What's the next question? Oh, it's a bit of a Baker one. While we're waiting for the boss to come back, I'm just wondering if I could mention to you, if you don't mind, that our friend Paula from Trend Academy is needing help on her Masters. She's doing some research and she needs people to fill in her research like questionnaire. So I'm going to leave a link to it, and if there's anyone that's watching now that can help her with that, it'd be amazing. It's all about mental health and well-being, and it's anonymous and it'll take a few moments to do, but she'd really appreciate it. Anyway, back to the boss with, what is the difference between Mummilates and the level 3 pre-postnatal course?
Great question. It's funny, it's actually something that I just wrote down there. I'm out of breath now running down the stairs. It was a parcel. So I'm going to answer for older adults and for pregnancy if I can do, but Julianne, if I don't come back to the original question, nag me. If you are doing a class, like a class that Sheila and I teach on a Monday, we have a lot of women, well, a lot, we've got 3 women in an advanced class that are 80. And well, actually, they're not anymore, are they, Sheila? They're 84 now. So they're 84, and they are super duper fabulous women. Now, they've been coming to that class for 300 years, literally. So in some ways, I have to be very cautious, because I can say, don't do this exercise if you've got osteoporosis, but it's very difficult for me to say, I wouldn't do that exercise because you're old. You know, that is a very different thing. However, those people are choosing to come to that class. But if I advertised it as an older adult class, so when we do our seated and supported, we will advertise it either just as seated and supported, because a lot of people need seated and supported Pilates classes who are not older adults. You might have somebody with MS or Parkinson's, they might be 40. So, but if you are advertising to the general public that your class is for older adults, or your class is for pregnant clients, then you should have that appropriate qualification. Does that make sense? If you just called it seated and supported, then technically you should have a qualification that covers you for doing that. Hold that thought. So the differences between the level 3 pre and postnatal and Mummilates is that for Mummilates 1, you don't have to take an exam, whereas with the pre and postnatal you do, and you should. There's no practical element in it, which really pisses me off, sorry, but that's not our thing, that's up to the powers that be. But if you say, for instance, if Julianne is teaching a class on Tuesday night when the world goes back to normal and she's in her community, and one of her ladies that's been coming to her for 6 months says, Julianne, I've just found out I'm pregnant, then the Mummilates would be able to give Julianne the sufficient information to be able to deal with that person that she's used to teaching throughout a pregnancy. Whereas with the pre and postnatal, you can advertise yourself as a pre and postnatal teacher. If you advertised yourself as an older adult or a pre and postnatal and you didn't have the appropriate qualifications and somebody sued you, you'd be in trouble. Whereas if somebody's pregnant, decides to carry on in Julianne's class throughout a pregnancy, and Julianne goes, look, I've done a course, I know what I'm doing with you, but I'm not a specialist person, then that person, she's educating, it's informed consent. So if you're going to do a specialist older adult class, or a specialist pregnancy, or a specialist postnatal, then you should have the appropriate qualifications. Whereas if you have got an 80-year-old who happens to come to your advanced class because they've been coming for 300 years and that's their choice, then that's their choice to come to that class. Sheila, would you agree with me on that with the older adult? Yeah.
Super. Got a question that Tracey might want to answer, because in our resources for celebration, Tracey did an amazing lecture on chronic pain. I found it very useful, particularly the aspects regarding the language we use. I think I'm all right to say shouty. You think I can talk about shouty joints? But anyway, Rachel's saying, are the causes of chronic pain and post-COVID pain, i.e. 6 months after a client has had it, the same? I don't know if you know that yet, do we?
I don't think we do. We don't have enough information on what's causing COVID. It's certainly a post-viral effect, whether it's post-inflammation. Whereas chronic pain can be pain of any source, and it's not really relevant what the source of the pain is. It's the fact that it's created the changes in the brain and perception of pain. So chronic pain, I liken chronic pain to the same kind of pain that an amputee would feel, in that they still feel sensation and pain, or can, in the amputated limb, because the pain isn't coming from the limb, because it ain't there. So it is what the nervous system has done with pain signals that have been experienced for a long time. Now, COVID, we're looking at COVID patients as having long COVID from 12 weeks, and we just don't have enough data or resources to know whether it is caused by muscle weakness or whether there are still high inflammatory levels in the body. So time will tell. But really, if somebody is experiencing pain with no mechanical or inflammatory cause, that's what we really are working with chronic pain. And for us as Pilates teachers, the way we communicate movement with somebody that is experiencing chronic pain is really important. So if you haven't listened to the session yet, have a listen to it. And when you do go back to teaching, just have a little think about the kind of language that we're perhaps using with some of our clients, and how we can maybe empower them a little bit more by tempering our language. Excellent.
Me and my friend had a little walk yesterday, and she said that her back or her hip, I can't remember now, was a bit hurting. She said, is that in my brain? Because she has listened to your lecture. I think I might have run out of things written down here. Have you got anything else you want to say, Cherry?
I'm just aware with Tracey, because if Tracey, I know Tracey's got to be leaving, so if you need to disappear, Tracey disappear. What I did want to talk about is that Tracey and I tomorrow we're going to be looking at, we're both on a course, and we're going to be looking at launching at some point, because lots of people have been asking me about Diamond Pilates, but we want to make sure it's right. You know, we've been very, very cautious not to rush into doing things. And I've been talking to Sheila. Sheila and I, and I'm very good at promoting other companies, that Sheila and I, Sheila's still a tutor for them, I was a tutor for them, a company called Later Life Training, and they are phenomenal if you are working with older adults. And Sheila and I have done our chair base with them, we've done our Otago, you say Tago, I say Tago, we've done our PSI, postural stability instructor with them, and the fantastic courses. So since before the first lockdown, we were desperately trying to get Later Life to come and do a chair-based class with myself and Anne Little and our team of teachers. And then COVID hit. And I have been nagging them and saying, you know, why don't you do an online chair course? Sheila and I could do it for you, because it's an ideal time for me to get some of my teachers skilled up and get them qualified. Now, Sheila, jump in if I'm wrong. Before all this, I was going to get my Frail, she's got a Pilates qualification, trained up, to do chair-based so that she could cover me when I was away. Yeah, so if Sheila couldn't cover me, Frail would be able to cover me. And I would have given her a prescriptive exercise, you know, you do this, you do that, she would have watched me, etc. But we found out, did we not, Sheila, at the time, that although she had a level 3 Pilates and she would have had a level 2 chair-based qualification, because the classes that we did at the time were called chair-based Pilates for older adults, Freya wouldn't have been insured because she didn't have a older adult level 3, yes? So we changed it to seated and supported Pilates, yes? But later life training are adamant that they're not taking chair-based online. I'm right with that, aren't I, Sheila?
They're combining the Otago and chair-based. They're
yes.
incorporating it all and not online.
Yes. So what Sheila and I are talking about, and this is for the future, is that if you want to teach seated and supported, we're on dodgy ground. If we run a course for you guys on seated and supported Pilates, we're on dodgy ground doing that. Because chair-based is on a level 2, it's a level 2 on the national framework. Nikki has been looking at Active IQ, to see if we were able to run it through Active IQ, and it's more of a disability qualification rather than necessarily what our clients, you know, what you as teachers would want. So Sheila and I are talking about the fact that we are going to put together a seated and supported Pilates course, but we would be recommending that if people want to do that, they should have the level 3 older adult qualification, because then they are covered and insured. And also we will not run the seated and supported course unless we can get some sort of recognition from SimSpa and get some SimSpa points, because that way then it will be a recognised certification to add on to the older adults. So I know it's a very complex procedure, and let's face it, we can all do whatever we want to do until somebody sues you, but that's the line that we're feeling that we should be going down, because I know lots of people in lockdown have reached out. I know Ruth has, I know Helen has reached out and done seated and supported Pilates class via things like Facebook and via Zoom, and Later Life Training haven't they, Sheila? They've really reached out to quite inactive older adults or people that need a seated and supported. So, you know, watch this space, but we are having to plod along because we're having to go through getting SimSpa validation and then going along those lines. But I would say you're on dodgy ground unless you've got one or the other qualification. So what we're trying to do is cover all eventualities. And I have to say that my seated and supported Pilates is one of the favourites sessions that I run. And before lockdown in Glossop, we had 2 full, and by full I mean 12 people, 12 to 15 full seated and supported classes, and we had 2 in Marple, and that maximum room that we had there was 10. This was before COVID. So they are a class that there is a need for those classes.
Excellent. So I've got lots of promises. We're having osteoarthritis, we're having diamond, we've got a band thing, and we're looking into seated and supported.
Am I right?
Go on,
Tracey, your arthritis thing, I've seen quite a bit of it. That's done.
That's ready.
Yeah.
right?
So
okay.
we're just passing that over to you now, Julianne.
Okay.
We don't do the clever stuff. Julianne does the clever stuff.
Well, I'm giving my attention to older adult and pre-postnatal, because we've actually got students signed up for those. So there's a few jobs that need finishing off for those 2 courses.
Or does somebody else need to finish off something?
So yeah, just to say that if you're interested in level 3 older adults, that's on trainedacademy.co.uk. Pretty much everything else we've talked about is cherrybaker.com. In particular, the content we've been talking about today, the questions we've been answering, all revolved around our celebration event, and you can sign up for that. You can get access to everything we did on the day, all the additional stuff that we didn't do on the day, but we also threw in for free, including Tracey's pain lecture, for instance, such a nugget. So if you're there on the day but you haven't even looked at the online stuff, come on, get in there and have a look. And you can sign up for that as well on cherrybaker.com. I think I haven't got anything else to say. at the moment.
There was a couple of other questions that I wanted, well, not questions, comments that I wanted to reply to. Julianne very kindly sent Tracey and Sheila and myself a list of all the comments that came through when we were doing the celebration. And Tracey and Sheila, I don't know about you, but when I printed it off and sat down with my brew to read through the questions, there was lots of questions, but there was also like, and it made me cry, because on the day, I was sort of a bit too to sort of take things on board and to be reading everything, and you know, people sort of saying, hi, I'm in Leeds, hi, I'm in Skegness, you know, hi, I'm in Brighton. It was just lovely. And those of you who know me know that I've always gone, I'll never do anything online. I won't do anything online, shit online. And then it actually brought tears to my eyes that there's so many people, and so many people that Sheila and Tracey and everybody else that works with us have worked with gazillions of times, and they've had to travel, you know, hours and hours to get to us, and they've done it again and again. So this is one way we will still do, when we can go back to normal, we will still do face-to-face education, because I believe that is much better. But then at least people that are aware, it was just wonderful seeing the fact that there was people from all over the place. We had people from Scotland, from Ireland. I think we had one lady from Spain, did we? One or two ladies from Spain, so that was brilliant. And Kate asked, because Tracey and I did something together, can you only be short and blonde to come to the studio in Glossop? No, we got Sheila in just to show that you can be short and dark. And also, if you watched Alex's tendon loading, because Alex isn't here, Alex is physio, she works in the National Health, and she's at work as we speak. We had great feedback on Alex's tendon loading, great feedback, and she's small and ginger. So there you go. So you don't have to be, Kate. You will still be allowed in the building, Kate. And Angie said that just recently, before celebration, she was feeling a little bit flat and a little bit sort of, I don't know, I've reached that point, and I use a lot of Tracey's stuff, and I do watch yours as well, Julianne, because I've pinned Sheila's stuff from the VIP stuff, and I have to watch other people and just listen and look at other people, because you get very stuck in your own way of doing things. And I think that Zoom and face-to-face, it's difficult for us to get the same feedback from our clients, and they're the important people. So Angie was saying that she felt very sort of a bit flat and a bit deflated, and she said that celebration really enthused her. So if that was just one person that we did that to, I think that was brilliant. I'm looking at my questions. We talked about the arthritis question. I'm done. But the biggest thing, Julianne, and Julianne will hate this, she will hate it, that we are at the front. But without people like Nikki and Julianne, we would not be able to do what we do, because basically I'm thick. Do you know, if I go anywhere near a computer button or anything, everybody just runs and hides. And, do you know, really, without Julianne and Nikki behind us to be able to get this out there, you know, for every hour that I do, I can tell you that Julianne's had to do 2. So, you know, without you, Julianne, we possibly wouldn't be here. We'd still be sort of upside down or back to front doing Facebook Live.
Oh, thanks, boss. Lots of nice feedback in the comments actually about the celebration, and you know, some people saying that they want to do it face to face, and other people saying that they love that they, you know, could do it from a distance. I think I would just like to remind everyone that the celebration we just did last month, that was the 2020 celebration. We've not done the 2021 yet, have we? So look out for that, maybe online and face to face.
What we've Nikki and I have been having a conversation, because it's normally November when we do that. So what this is, you know, let's face it, guys, we don't know what world we're going to go back to, but say we can go back to doing face to face, we will probably do a face to face in Ashton, the venue that we used last time, and so sorry, Tracey, that means you travelling, but we'll probably do it in Ashton. But what we will do is we're going to research and look at if we can do it live at the same time, so that so those people who want to do face to face, if we're allowed, I don't think we'll be allowed big groups. I just don't know. I know my hair's like Boris's, but I don't know what Boris is thinking. And then also, you know, we're looking at the fact that can we do it at the same time, or maybe we'll have to do it live one day and then online the day after. But watch this space. It will be November time when it happens, but without everybody being so passionate, because you guys are spending your time, you're spending money that you have not got. So we've got to thank you guys as well, really, because without you guys, I'd now be living at the studio because I'd have lost my house. That's the truth.
All right, shall we say goodbye then?
Yeah. Tracey, you've got 3 minutes for a wee before you start working again. Thank you, Tracey. Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you, Julian. Bye. Thank you, guys. Bye.